Well, the first time I walked by, I was really surprised to see a bookstore like this in the neighborhood. Usually when I want to go to a bookstore, I need to go to Barnes & Noble's downtown. And when I saw it right here in my backyard, I was pleasantly surprised.
So Veronica's initial idea was to just get a bunch of donations from a couple of publishers that were based in New York so that they could move the stock to us pretty quickly, and just sort of almost as a demonstration to people that, you know, you can start up this type of physical point of sale for intellectual material, for books. And what happened was kind of unpredictable at Word Up. From the very first night when we had the first opening event, like 10 Dominican poets walked in off the street and demanded, you know, time on the mic. Beyond that first week that this pop-up store was supposed to exist, it went into a month. And when we talked to the landlord, who had, with the help of the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, given us the space, we realized that we had events scheduled going into September, and they were impressed by that. So they kept extending this complimentary rent to us to keep the space going.
The events that we run, although they draw in a lot of people, we don't charge for the events, or rarely.
I kept getting text messages and photos all night from Immigration Circus, and just people were sending reports of what was going on because they were so excited about how packed in it was and what kind of dialogue was taking place.
This is a court of law. Sit down, young lady.
You know, if you have to give it some sort of, you know, classification, you know, as an animal in real estate and in sort of storefronts, yes, it's a bookstore, but it's so much more.
It means worlds for the neighborhood because there aren't a lot of places for our youth to quote-unquote hang out. The streets are not a great place to hang out.
But every time I come here, I really enjoy the vibes, and I think it's a really great place for people to come and build, like, you know, people like myself, because it's not a lot of because like the influences that's out there aren't always necessarily so positive. So it's a great place for people like myself to come and build and unite.
I remember when it was just a couple chairs and a whole lot of books, no bookshelves. As I love seeing it come so far.
I think that there's so much potential in this place for us to grow as a community, especially for first generation Dominicans. There's so much potential for my children who are going to grow up here, you know, who are 5 and 1 years old, and potential for the up-and-coming artists who want to just maybe come up here for an open mic night and read a poem, and who knows, they might become the next Dominican-American writer.
I like to read books that teach me about myself and other people, of course, but being being black, first of all, I really enjoy learning about my own history that I was never really able to learn in school. And during high school, I've been reading a whole lot of books about, you know, the civil rights movement and whatnot. Even before then, like all the way back to Africa, like stuff about my history. And it's
one thing that surprised us, you know, we started carrying books in Russian because there were a lot of people coming through. You know, it's just happens to be a consequence of our being so close to the Port Authority on their way to work. You know, and we had the sign that said bilingual books, and this woman said, you know, well, I speak Russian, and you said you have bilingual books, and we realized, like, oh yeah, of course, duh, you know, but that doesn't mean anything to her if the books are in Spanish.
It does something, I feel it does something for our culture. A lot of our heritage come from places abroad. For like example, the Caribbean. My mother was born in the Dominican Republic. I was born here. And I need a place where I can build my own culture. My mother's culture, she was born there, and she brought a lot of aspects of her culture here. But how about my space?
And because, you know, we have the support of 2 nonprofits, Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance and Seven Stories Institute, I guess a lot of people think that we have like money from them, or money from money from the city, or money from grants. But this whole place runs not at all on grants. All of that we've done has been run completely on these, like a lot of them on these dollar book sales or sales of books by local authors and micro presses, and otherwise just people who just like what's going on here and just keep saying, keep the change, we want you to exist, keep the change. And that's what's paid our rent, that's what's, you know, paid for anything that we've done, that covered all of our operating expenses. We know that our expenses are quite low because we're all volunteer run and we just keep things really bare bones, but I don't know if people really understand the scope of just how much people want this here in the neighborhood.
And that's, you know, you have to think of this as an organism in that sense. And if it has something preying on it constantly, it can't survive. For all the great intentions and all of the support of people that it has and all the foot traffic, in the end, you know, if we get displaced by a Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know, that's a reality that's pretty hard to be back against. And that's pretty much the situation we're finding ourselves in right now.
They deserve to get rid of all this other stuff around here that's not it's worthless. Like the guy standing in the corner selling weed. That's what they gotta get rid of. That's who they have to cancel their lease to.
It's a horrible noose to place around the neck of a cultural institution that it compete with these other things, you know, a McDonald's or whatever, you know, whatever thing you can name will displace one of these places. And you know, people really ought to think about the fact that small local niche places like this are as vital as the museums, as all the other cultural institutions, because these are the living ones, these are the experiments, these are the ones that are going to fuel those institutions in the future.
I hope that everybody gets a taste of this experience, because it's definitely a beautiful thing, and we need more places like this.